answer some questions. If you could type those, as Hannah mentioned, into the chat box, we'll try and get to them as best we can during or certainly after the webinar. As I said, this is going to be one of a few webinar series with a slightly different focus each time, but this really is to provide the start and the overall idea of the Microsoft VDI journey that we've taken. So let's discuss where we were, and where we were, gosh, about a decade ago, and actually a little more than that, but I rounded it up because this is when things really started bubbling to the surface. And what was expected of VDI, at least through the eyes of pundits and evangelists and folks selling VDI technology. And I'm just going to throw these quotes up here from these news headlines up here from a decade ago, and there was certainly a feeling within the industry that VDI was to replace the desktop computer completely and utterly. And fast forward 10 to 15 years, we wouldn't have boxes on our desk, and we'd be running entirely through a VDI type environment where the compute is done on the back end. Of course, that didn't quite happen the way we expected it, but we are in a situation where there are some use cases, very good use cases out there where are using VDI, but I think the expectation didn't meet the actual realization that in fact occurred. So Tangent, and where do we fit into this? As some of you may be familiar with our journey and our story of desktop virtualization, but in fact it started a little before 2009 actually, but really kicked off when we partnered with a startup in the Bay Area called Kavisa. Kavisa were a 10-person company at the time, and we decided to productize their software and deliver it as a turnkey VDI in-a-box solution, which actually it turned out to be once Citrix bought them a few years later. So we continued our partnership with Citrix and sold to many customers a VDI in-a-box solution. And the reason for this was we felt that delivering a simplified approach to VDI from the onset, delivering a solution that could meet a specific usage case and be relatively simple to deploy and manage would be a good fit for VDI. At this time, of course, there was huge deployments of VDI happening all over the country, some more complicated than others, or expensive, some more successful than others, and our go-to-market approach was let's start small and grow on demand. And it worked quite well for both us and Kavisa. Like I said, Citrix was acquired. Kavisa was acquired by Citrix, and then a few years ago, it was announced that the rebranded solution, which was VDI in a box, would be end of life. Which brings us to today. In fact, October 2017 is where VDI in a box officially ends support from Citrix. They announced this a few years back. So Tangent has over the last 2 years, in fact, been in the process of not only converting our current customers over to a similar approach, but on a different technology, I suppose, which is obviously the Microsoft VDI solution. And we've been moving folks across to that, as well as acquiring new customers to put them and meet various use cases on this platform. And what we've learned through the whole process is that VDI doesn't fit everyone exactly the same way. Now that may seem obvious, but VDI is ideal in certain use cases. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to do every single computer in your organization from the onset as a virtual desktop, as there's so many different use cases. Now, of course, I'm referring to organizations with 1,000 or more desktops, perhaps even 500 or more desktops, with the different types of workflows and workloads that end users require. And we're seeing that full enterprise VDI, certainly in the higher desktop quantities, is extraordinarily rare, although obviously it is being done in some cases. We also found that implementation does not have to be overcomplicated. Now, this is a fairly straightforward and reasonable thing to say, although we've seen instances where VDI technologies and VDI deployments in general have been overcomplicated for various reasons. We found the simple approach, which goes back to it's ideal for certain use cases, to be fairly simple deployments. And the big thing is let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not put sunken costs into brand new hardware. Let's really take an inventory of what you have and how we might be able to use it, and that goes all the way from the back end to the front end devices. So let's run through a few usage cases here that we've had our hands in over the last years. City of Oakland is a terrific usage case, and actually this is fairly recent, and we deployed solutions in their emergency operations center, a Microsoft VDI solution. We also did it in their report writing rooms when police officers would come in and need to download their body cam footage. They wanted a report writing room that was virtualized to manage it better, to manage peripherals better, to have a more secure environment. So we put it in about 4 or 5 different stations throughout the city. Another example of a municipality here is Ponca City. They used it for training centers. In fact, they decided to do it to all employees, but where they had the best traction was in the training centers and of course the library, and that's the nature of an end user. A user is in and out. It may work on shifts. You may have folks that are sharing computers where you can easily destroy and manage the desktop from an administrator level. And then Dayton School District up in Washington. Again, school districts have very good use cases just by the nature of students, that they share computers, they come into training labs, they're obviously in and out of the library all day long. The classroom, again, that supports many different subjects, maybe is a fantastic usage case for and I'm not saying education in general, but when we talk about the nature of an end user and how they're using their computer, we have to look at it from a holistic level. So with that, hopefully that provides some context to where Tangent is today. I do want to pass it over to Tim, and he's going to speak specifically in regards to the Microsoft point of view. So Tim, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Tetrick, and I am what we call a partner technology strategist with Microsoft. And what that means is I work closely with some of our very best partners up and down the West Coast, like Tangent, and helping to bring Microsoft solutions to our joint customers. And I just want to spend a few minutes here to give you a quick overview of the RDS and VDI solutions that we have available from Microsoft. So at its core, Remote Desktop Services, or RDS, is a platform. It's a platform for building virtualization solutions that enable users to access their data and applications from anywhere and from any device. And so that remote access can be everything from individual applications all the way up to full desktops. RDS also provides flexibility around deployment. So you can, a lot of flexibility in where and how you want to deploy. So we're going to talk about this more in just a second, but at a high level, there's deployment options around on-premises, deploying to the cloud, and even hybrid deployments. RDS can also help you reduce costs by helping to consolidate infrastructure, also helps improve efficiencies through things like centralized management, centralized control that you get from an RDS VDI solution. And finally, RDS providing a very secure and extensible platform. So it helps you protect your sensitive corporate data by first encrypting it in transit at all times, and then also further protecting it by making sure that that data is not stored locally on the device. It's also, again, an extensible platform. We know that each organization has its own unique needs. So RDS provides the ability to customize the solution, and with the help of our Microsoft partners such as Tangent, who are really the experts in delivering these RDS-based solutions to customers. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, Remote Desktop Services has a number of deployment options that are available to fit your needs. So RDS can be deployed on-premises, of course, via a couple different models, first via session-based virtualization or session-based computing. This leverages the compute power of Windows Server to provide a cost-effective, multi-session concurrent use environment to drive your users' workloads. So you can think of this as what we used to call terminal server or terminal services, now referred to as session-based computing or session-based virtualization. We also have virtual desktop infrastructure or VDI-based solutions now. These leverage the Windows Client OS to provide users with the high performance, the application compatibility, and the familiarity that they've come to expect from using their Windows Client OS. Now you also have the option to deploy session-based virtualization and VDI solutions in the cloud. So this model is becoming popular in that it can help eliminate some of the high-cost capital expenses from procuring your hardware and your software, and help move those capital expenses into lower monthly recurring costs, move those to an operational expense via the cloud. And with VDI in the cloud specifically, Microsoft has made some significant licensing changes recently that allow Windows 10 desktop clients to be licensed for use in the cloud. So whether, again, that's Microsoft Azure, third-party hosted environments, that wasn't always the case. It used to be that the client OS was not able to run in Azure or third-party hosted environments. Again, making some changes to the licensing to making this a reality now for customers. We also have remote desktop clients across a broad range of platforms here. You can use remote desktop clients to connect to a remote PC and your work resources from almost anywhere using just about any device. So we see here remote desktop clients across the different Windows platforms, Android, iOS, even Mac OS. And you can connect, using those remote desktop clients, you can connect to your work PC and have access to all your apps, your files, your network resources, just as if you were sitting at your desk. You can even leave, for example, apps open at work and then see those same apps when you connect from home. Remote desktop clients provide a secure way, as we talked about earlier, of providing applications and data to users. So again, I mentioned earlier, the traffic is always encrypted in transit, and the data never leaves the data center. So, for example, if you have a user that is, utilizing their iPad, let's say they're traveling, utilizing their iPad with remote desktop services to access their data and applications remotely, and let's say that iPad gets lost or stolen, your company data, sensitive company data applications aren't compromised. If someone was able to get into the iPad, they're not going to be able to get access to that sensitive company information because it's, again, all kept in the data center. But regardless of the device or the platform or the form factor, remote desktop clients are optimized for that great Windows experience that users know and love, and on the devices and platforms that your users want to use and that your users love to use. And the story around RDS gets even better when we talk about Windows Server 2016. So Windows Server 2016 released a few months back. It introduced a number of RDS innovations focused really around these three areas. So first, increased performance. We introduced a number of performance enhancements in Windows Server 2016, but particularly around graphics improvements and graphics performance. Next, scalability. So the RDS connection broker, which is kind of the heart of the engine for RDS deployments. It's the thing that maintains the state for the sessions and associating them with the users, etc. So you can imagine it's doing a lot of reads and writes to the database. So we made some significant improvements here, made that traffic and that conversation much less chatty, made it more robust. We also made it more cost-effective to deploy because now you can share a SQL cluster deployment. And then finally, we optimized Windows Server 2016 for those deployments to the cloud, again, as we're seeing popularity grow around hosting RDS and VDI solutions in the cloud. With Windows Server 2016, it requires a fewer number of server roles, and it also requires a fewer number of VMs required when doing those cloud-hosted deployments. So that's really all I had. Again, I just wanted to do that quick update around those technologies, those Microsoft technologies around RDS and VDI. Just really encourage you to engage Tom and Hannah and the Tangent team. They have a lot of experience in delivering these solutions, as we saw in some of the case studies that Tom just talked about, but some really rich experience around doing this for customers. Encourage you to engage with them, and then also let us know if you have questions. So we wanted to leave a few minutes here for questions, I think. So let us know if you have questions, but at this point I'm going to pass it back over to Hannah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim. Great. Yeah. As Tim mentioned, here is the opportunity. If you have any questions, please feel free to either type them into the chat box or you can simply ask them if you're just on the call in. Great. So, Tim, are you on the chat box as well?
I am.
Okay, great. So we have a question here below about the 2016 Server Edition. What 2016 Server Edition?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think, I'll verify on this, but I think for sure standard and data center, I think that's the extent of it. I'll verify that for sure, and if Tom or somebody else on, feel free to jump in as well. But I believe both of those are, sufficient for VDI.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Great. Anyone else? All right, well, you've got both Tim and Tom's email addresses right there. So if anything does come up, something wakes you up in the middle of the night and you have a sudden question that you need answered, feel free to shoot either of them an email, and I'm sure that they would be happy to get back to you with an answer. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tim, for being on the call with us, and thank you, everyone, for participating. Have a great day.
Thanks.